All right, everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to the 2018 School Committee Forum for Warwick, brought to you by the Warwick Beacon. I am Ethan Hartley, the Associate Editor of the Warwick Beacon, and I just can't thank you guys enough for showing up and participating in local democracy. It is so important, and I can't overstate that. First off, thank you to everyone from Pilgrim, from the school administration, a beautiful space that we have here to demonstrate the talent of our students and hopefully the talent of our elected representatives as well. I want to give a big thanks to all the student volunteers who are helping today, from everything from being ushers, some on cameras, of course, and many more who are going to be helping through their coursework actually cut this production up and send it to a local access television station to be broadcast, hopefully, to many more people. And thank you to PEGRI-TV from Providence for broadcasting this to as many people as possible. Much appreciated. I want to give a thanks again to the Warwick School Department for helping pull this off, in particular Andrea Place, Christopher Pratt, and Rich Denningham for really running with this on short notice and kind of not saying no and just helping run with things and getting this together on, again, super short notice. Your efforts have not been unnoticed, I promise. We'll just take a second to introduce kind of the ground rules before we bring up our panel. I'm giving you the introduction now, so that's happening. When candidates are introduced, they have a card on their desk with a number on it. That number corresponds to the order of opening statements. Opening statements will last 60 seconds per candidate. Once opening statements are read, we will then basically introduce the first student volunteer to ask our first question, and then we'll be off and rolling, and hopefully everything will go smooth from there. As you heard, if any fistfights break or anybody feels inclined to do something silly, we can stop the production and everything will be fine. But I don't anticipate any problems. Was there anything else? In terms of once questions get rolling, candidates each get 90 seconds for responses. Rebuttals will be given at my discretion. Normally, a rebuttal will happen if somebody is directly mentioned by another candidate. Due to time constraints, obviously, we want to get as many questions as possible in without too much back and forth. So do your best to give your full response in that allotted time. I want to just say, and again, not that this is going to happen, but if things go off the rails a bit and there's some personal attacks or any kind, I'll step in and stop those immediately. This is supposed to be a constructive dialogue. And again, due to time limitations and the number of candidates we have involved, I have to unfortunately be strict in terms of cutting off statements and questions and moving on just so we can get as many things in as possible. With about 10 minutes left in the production, this is about an hour and a half production, so strap yourselves in. I will basically cease the question portion and transition into closing statements, which will be 60 seconds and go in reverse order from the order of opening statements. And then one other quick note before we get into this. No, we can do that later. So we can introduce our candidates now. Please step one up to the stage and we can introduce you one by one, starting with Kyle Adams from District 1. Also in District 1 is running Richard Casella. Going for the District 2 seat is Judy Cobden. Also for District 2 is Terry Medeiros. And District 3 running is Nathan Cornell.
They told us not to look at him yet.
And as a quick side note, our other District 3 candidate, Corey Smith, was unable to be here. I guess if there's any good excuse to miss something like this, it's actually he's literally currently educating young minds right now for his job at Johnson & Wales. So we wish him the best. We wish he could be here. His presence is missed. But he did want to let us know that he will be, his lovely wife is here actually marking down questions, and he'll be answering those later through the wonderful world of Facebook. So if anybody wants to catch his take on these questions, they will be able to do so. He'll also be attending the next forum happening at Pilgrim, which is a week from now. Right. So look forward to that as well. So you've heard enough of me, and we'll get started here. Again, if there's any clarifications necessary, I'm right here. So we can start off with candidates. Flip over your cards and assess your order of opening statements. Yep. Yellow card on the table.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So whoever has number 1, we will let go with opening statement first. Judy Cobden, take it away.
My name is Judy Cobden, and I have a BS in criminal justice and a BS in psychology and with a minor in forensic science. I'm a product of the Warwick schools. I graduated proudly from John Brown Francis, Aldrich, and Pilgrim. I've been a member of the PTSA on the board for Warwick Vets. I'm on my second term. I've been on the policy committee. I'm on my second year. I've been a mentor for judge and senior projects, and I'm a pro bono educational advocate that I've been doing for about 20 years, but now for the past 3 I've been doing it in Warwick, helping parents get their way through when they have problems with their IEPs and 504s. And I think I'll be an excellent candidate with my background. It's in white-collar crime. My background is all in financial, legal, and policy and compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, who has number 2?
That's me.
Mr. Casella, please.
My name's Rick Casella. I'm a product of the Warwick Schools, a lifelong resident, and a local small business owner. I want to be a representative of the Warwick School Committee, and as your rep, I will fight hard for the students and citizens of Warwick. I'm the best person for this position. I have a lifetime of practical experience as a father of 2 sons who have been through the system and are on to great things. My son Henry is a graduate of Pilgrim High School and is currently at Virginia Military, where he'll commission as a 2nd lieutenant in the Army this year. And my son Edward is a sophomore at American University studying environmental science. I'd like to say that my oldest son will protect the world and my youngest will save it. My wife Donna and I are very proud of them and thankful to the Warwick Schools for preparing them for a bright future. I've been committed to the Warwick Schools over the past 2 decades as a PTA president and frequent volunteer. As a realtor and construction project manager, I have a wealth of experience and knowledge of construction, and I clearly understand what needs to be done to bring our neglected school buildings to 2018 standards. As a taxpayer and small business owner, I have practical experience handling budgets, contracts, and negotiations. As your rep, I will support the arts, athletics, and a solid curriculum that feeds the needs of all kinds of learners.
Time's up. Thank you. Who had number 3? Kyle, go ahead.
My name is Kyle Adams. I've lived in Warwick since 1995, and I'm a graduate of Pilgrim High School in the class of 2010. And since then, I went on to get my undergraduate degree from Bryant University and my MBA from Johnson & Wales. I've gone into this campaign with 3 main priorities. The first being safety, because no parent should be dropping their kid off at school wondering if they're going to be coming home that night. The second is communication. The school committee needs to have open communication with the city council, with the parents, with the teachers, and with the city of Warwick as a whole. It's only with open communication that we can bring transparency and accountability back to Warwick. And the third is funding for our schools. And I've made a point of trying to take care of this preemptively by establishing rapport with members of the city council, with state representatives, and state senators. So that way, if I get elected, we can hit the ground running and we can start saving Warwick schools. I think that is time for a change in Warwick schools, and I believe that I am that change.
Thank you. Number 4. Nathan?
My name, should I do my name or I'll just do my
Whatever you
name.
want.
My name's Nathan Cornell, and I'm running for a school committee District 3 seat because I care about our schools and I believe they can be run better. I am proud to say I'm a product of Warwick Public School System, and I graduated from Tollgate High School in 2016, and I also attended Cedar Hill and Windman. If elected, I believe I can create a new standard for a school committee member, one of which is to be more involved in one's community. I believe that a school committee member should attend events. For example, I've been attending events all year because I believe it's important to meet people, and I want to have participate in these events too and try to help form these events. Also, I believe if I'm elected to school committee, I can bring a unique perspective to the school committee, being a recent student, because I've been in the schools. I know the issues, and I believe that the best person to know what the students want is a recent student. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And number 5.
I'm Terry Medeiros, and first I want to thank all the people that were invested in getting this together. It's really impressive to be here in front of the biggest screen in Rhode Island. That's pretty impressive. I think that this is really an example of what we want as a school district and the community coming together, a discussion for understanding face-to-face, and that I think it's for the purpose of seeing each other and trying to get to a compromise. I'm a teacher in the private sector. I'm a partner in a business that has to follow the same state regulations, and all the policies that the public school does. And I'm a taxpayer, and I think that these qualities make me be very well prepared to sit on the school committee, which has the responsibility to balance the meeting of all the needs of the students with the funds that are provided us. And change can be difficult. I think I'm a pretty good listener. And although it's challenging, I think that it's worth it, and I would like to continue seeing the success in this district.
Thank you very much.
How'd I do?
Before we bring up our first student volunteer for questions, sorry. Before we bring up our first student volunteer for their first question, I wanted to just lay out the ground rule of how questions will be answered, something I forgot to do in the opening. We'll basically start from the left stage and move to the right for the first question. The next question will be answered by the next person to the right, and then rotate that way, just to ensure fairness. So we can bring up our first student volunteer, Danielle Stone, a senior from Pilgrim.
What is your understanding of the role of a school committee in public education?
And we'll start Mr. Adams.
My understanding of the role of a school committee person is that they need to really be on track with what's going on in their schools, what the parents want, what the teachers need to provide for their students, and what's going on in the administration. So that way, when it comes down to it, there's open communication, as I said before. So that way, we are understanding what every stakeholder needs in order to make a change in Warwick or provide what's best for our students. That's about it for me.
Okay, Mr. Casella?
I believe that the role of the school committee is to set a perimeter, kind of the boundaries that the school system itself will work within. And the administration's job is to implement the policies, the curriculum, the delivery systems, the technologies, and all those things that fit within that shell. I think the school committee also in the meetings that they provide for the enrichment of the public also allows the exchange of ideas, and also for the public to be involved and listen to what's going on, and then have the opportunity in public comment to ask questions, or not ask questions, but make statements that then can be, absorbed by the school committee, and then hopefully those important questions or points that the public will make will help us be better representatives. So that's my idea as to what the function of the Warwick School Committee is.
Thank you. Ms. Cobden?
The role of the school committee in itself should be to oversee our school systems and to make sure that our children are getting the best public education as possible. We need to do a good job and give the best public education that we can offer as overseeing the departments. We need to make sure we have the right programs and that we get the best funding that we can get, and oversee the administration to make sure that they do the best job that they can do.
Ms. Medeiros?
The role of a school committee member would be a nonpartisan member of the community, balancing yourself between the taxpayer, the school community, the students. There's lots of jobs that a school committee member has to do. It's setting policy, it's creating a budget, could be hearing appeals, setting standards for evaluations of staff, behavior conduct. There's a lot that goes into it. Lots of homework before meetings, lots of emails before meetings to be prepared. So when you get to the meetings, you have your information and you can make better time of these meetings that can run kind of long. So you have to be aware of all the policies that go into what makes a district work and be able to communicate with whoever's elected in office on the city side.
Thank you. Mr. Cornell?
I think it's very important for a school committee member actually to visit the schools, because you can't make decisions on education unless you know what's happening in schools. So that means you need to go there, you need to talk to principals, you need to talk to teachers, you need to talk to students, because you need to have all the facts before you make decisions. And the school committee, they make major decisions, and they need to have all the facts. And I feel like for years now, many decisions have been made without all the facts, and that has caused problems for the city. So I definitely think this needs to change, and going to schools would be a good first step.
I want to ask a quick follow-up question on that in the same order. If elected to the school committee, you're posed with balancing the wants and the needs and desires of both collective bargaining units, the public, the members of the general public, and while also dealing with the fiscal realities of a school district. So my question is, also, some of those issues may not exactly be known to the public, or maybe can't even be disclosed to the public. So my question would be, in examining these complex issues, how are you able to put aside maybe preconceived notions and remain objective throughout the process? Do you believe that that's something that you're capable of? Mr. Adams.
I definitely believe that I am capable of that objectivity. In terms of what you need to do versus the wants and needs, the main thing is the priorities. Like I mentioned before, safety. That is the number one concern. We want to make sure our kids are safe in the schools or on the buses or anywhere on school grounds. And then that's when you start working your way down. The next thing they need is the best education possible. How can we possibly do that? This is the order we have to do it. Is like we do the safety, we do their education, and then we add the extras on top. Anything that can possibly work for the students to help even amplify their education, whether it's the Chromebooks or everything, so on and so forth. I felt like I had a great education without the Chromebooks. I'm not saying that we need to get rid of the Chromebooks, but it's more along the lines of we just need to focus on the bare necessities first, focus on the extras later.
Thank you. Mr. Casella, same question.
Well, objectivity is very important as it pertains to my involvement with the school committee going forward. I think that an example might be the way I've kind of conducted my campaign, and that I've tried to concentrate on my communication with the public and the voters, as opposed to the stand that Kyle made, which I think is important. But in this setting, in my quest to become your school committee member, I try to keep the objectivity within myself by kind of keeping my distance, because I feel like objectivity could be affected if a candidate is involved or supported by some of the people that we have to go and really kind of go belly to belly with and try to get money from the city council. And it's very difficult to go to someone and say, listen, I need what I need to do what I need to do. Oh, and by the way, thank you for helping me out along the way. So I've tried to kind of keep my distance. I'm very familiar with many of the people that are currently serving. So and we respect each other, and I think we have a mutual admiration. But I've been lucky enough to be able to conduct my campaign in such a way that I've been able to focus mostly on what I think I'd like to do for the future and the people that I'll be serving, as opposed to reaching out to the politicians and other people in some of the different other groups. I promote transparency, clarity, and truth in my dealings as your representative, and I'm a very optimistic and positive person. And I look forward to the best to come for Warwick schools, and that I can promise to you.
Thank you. Ms. Cobden?
I'm going to have to also agree with what Kyle said about the safety of our schools and the best education. That is obviously comes first. We need priorities to be done first, and I'm not going to repeat what Kyle said because he was spot on with that. But I'm also going to say that we need to include the taxpayers, we need to include the teachers, and we need to include the students. And that is not being done right now. I have been going through campaigning also, and I hear very much the same complaints when I go door to door. We need to listen. As a school committee member, if I am elected, I want to be told off. I want to be challenged. I want someone to give me their opinion, and if it differs from mine, that is fine, because I want to embrace everyone. I think it's very important to our kids' education and the safety and the success of this school system to have all transparency. I'm a team player. I'm very big on teamwork. I'm very dedicated, and I'm very tenacious. And when it comes to looking for things, I can definitely do that. I already am working on a project right now that could save probably close to $1 million on fixing some of our schools that I can't believe, and I'm working with Camille Villa-Wilkinson, Representative Camille Villa-Wilkinson on this, and I can't believe that the school administration or the school committee hasn't thought of this. So therefore, I really think that we need to include everyone and be open to everyone.
Thank you. Ms. Medeiros?
Can you just repeat the last part of that question? How
Sure.
would you be objectively with fiscal
Yes,
responsibility?
remaining objective throughout the many different sides, yelling at you for what they want.
Yes.
And then confidence in your
Okay.
abilities to stay objective through those
Okay.
different challenges.
So through my experience on school committee, when there are people very, very frustrated or concerned, it very often comes down to change. I'm a victim of that myself. Change is not always easy. It's not always convenient. And as the years have gone by and I've learned more about the fiscal reality that's been most recent in our community in the last 10 years, the reality was that for us to bring our kids forward into some really great and dynamic education, like some of the kids just told me in the studio, we needed and we could have the space to consolidate. And I did my very, very best to be objective. I put everything down, weighed all the pros and cons, and the thing that weighed the most on me was seeing the juniors, putting myself in the place of a junior, and going down that hall and wondering, are my friends gonna be with me? And whenever I talked to them and I listened to them, I really did understand, and then I still had to make an objective opinion, but in the end, in checking back with them, they were all fine with it and realized that they weren't tied to the walls, but more to the memories. But I will admit it was hard to be objective during that time, but I see all the successes that have come forward, most notably the smooth transition of the team work that everybody put in to the 6th grade moving up. So it is worth it, but hard work to be objective with the big fiscal responsibility.
Thank you. Mr. Cornell?
Well, from attending every monthly school committee meeting in the last 3 years, I've seen the school committee many times spend money on things I don't think are in the best interest of the student. For years, for example, there was a PR consultant being paid tens of thousands of dollars, and that money, I just think now, if we save some of that money, maybe we could have had the mentoring program now. So students must always come first, and also, and that because the students is highest priority. That's the purpose of education, to educate the students. And we shouldn't cut programs just because the school committee has spent money on things that are not necessary, like $40,000 for a school website. I think that was something that was spent that it could have gone somewhere else. So we need to make sure that programs are not cut and we don't waste money on things that we don't need.
All right, we'll move on to our second student volunteer. Tara Monestes is a sophomore from Tollgate. She'll be asking the next question.
With the looming threat of school violence ever present in our society, are there improvements that you believe should be made to the district to increase school safety for students, teachers, and school employees? Do you believe that additional resource officers should be placed in schools throughout the district, or is there a different approach to making our schools safer?
And we'll start with Mr. Casella for this question.
Well, I know that there is a program now, the Mutual Link, that would allow for a push-button response from all the parties necessary to lock down and bring safety to the schools in an emergency situation. I believe that we've added a couple of resource officers to the schools so that we have a presence there as far as having a uniformed officer or someone that has that kind of responsibility. Obviously, school safety is very important. I think the app that they have that ties into the Mutual Link is important for all the teachers to get on board with that. And there's been some pushback, I believe, because of the it being on a personal phone or something like that. There's a kind of a Big Brother thing, or I don't know if that's the proper place for me to place that app. But in an emergency, with everything else in lockdown or everything else kind of off the grid, it's nice to know that you can push a button and get real-time information about what's going on as far as school safety goes. So I'm all for school safety. I can't say specifically whether or not I have any plans to add any more safety personnel, but I think so far what's been going on as far as building a safe environment for the kids has worked, and I think there's always room for improvement. And I have an open mind. I'm a free thinker, and if initiatives for improving safety in Warwick schools come forward, I will look at those initiatives, and if they need to be implemented, I'll be very affirmative about it.
Thank you. Ms. Cobden?
Safety is actually one of my big fortes, my education and criminal justice. I've spent a lot of time in the past 3 years in all the schools in our district, and there are major things that need to be changed. We have safety windows that don't open. We don't have intercom systems that work. This is what we were talking about earlier about spending money properly. We have not had an intercom system that works here for 3 years, and we were told it was going to be working by the time school was starting this year. And the bid didn't go out until the end of the summer, I believe, and they found out that it's an old school and it has to be done, it's a bigger job. Well, if it's been out for 3 years, it should have already been looked at. I also have issues with the way they've set up the annex with the fence. That's very dangerous. Someone with a sick mind could do stuff. There are plenty of things that I can see that are wrong. But instead of fixing safety right now that I've watched in the 3 years, we've wasted money on the admin building before the safety of our children. And this is wrong, and it needs to be changed. We need to have security be number one. No, it has to be a priority in this day and age, and we need to focus on that first as far as, spending money. It's ridiculous that we spent over $1 million on an administration building, $30,000 on AC, but we don't have a simple thing as an intercom system. And as far as the app on your phone, you're asking teachers to use their personal things again. And I could see why some people would have a problem. And what if someone doesn't have a smartphone?
Time is up, Ms. Cobden. Thank you. Ms. Medeiros?
Well, I know that not being brought up in the generation that our present teenagers are in, I think it's almost kind of melancholy that we always have to think about locked doors, cameras, intercoms, apps for our phone, connecting with all the first responders, but it is a necessary thing that we need, and we can always add more. Unfortunately, as things come up, we had a robocall bomb threat a year or two ago, and that caused us to have to change the protocol. We have put in a lot of cameras, which it has helped. I know we before 2016, in the whole district, we had 38 cameras. We now have well over 300 cameras, and there's more that we can do. I have talked about some form of metal detectors going in the school, and there's still discussion going on about that, but I just think we always have to be open about what's coming up to make our kids safer, less intrusive. So there's always more we can do.
Thank you. Mr. Cornell?
Well, actually, this is a very important issue to me because actually I've heard from students who have told me of their concerns at schools, like, for example, doors not being locked as they should. And some students have even told me that they're scared to even go to school, which should never happen. School should be the safest place one can go to. So, and actually, a few months ago, I spoke with the students at Pilgrim High School at the Pilgrim Political Involvement Club to talk about safety issues. But if I get elected to a school committee, I'll make sure that's a high priority. I'll continue to talk to the students and to see how we can improve the safety in our schools. And I'm definitely for more SROs in our schools.
Thank you very much. We can move on to third student volunteer, Zachary LaFontaine. Oh, I apologize. My deepest, sincere condolence and apologies. I screwed myself up with my own order. Mr. Adams, thank you. Please go ahead.
So, obviously Judy hit on the intercoms, which I am a huge believer in, especially because an old teacher of mine has told me his concerns about how his intercom hasn't worked for years. Also, I want to just reiterate, proper procedures need to be implemented. Just to give an example, when I graduated from here 8 years ago, I never once heard of a substitute teacher going into their classroom, and when there is a lockdown drill, they don't have the keys to lock their classes. And one teacher had to go door to door to lock their classrooms or let them know that there was even a lockdown procedure because their intercom wasn't working. So I think there needs to be a lot of insight on this intercom system. and there needs to be proper procedures in order so that way if there is a lockdown drill going on, everyone's classrooms are locked and everyone is prepared adequately for any impending threat, even if it's drill.
Thank you. And now we can move on to our third student volunteer. Zachary LaFontaine is a senior at Pilgrim, politically active, created the Pilgrim Political Pill Pie.
Yes,
Pilgrim
sir.
Political Involvement Club. And he's here to ask a third question to all the candidates. This one will start with Ms. Cobden. Go ahead, Zach.
All right, good evening. One of the many budget reductions this summer was the reduction of 15 custodians. In all, the district reducing the budget by $6.6 million to balance the budget by law. Many have called for the restoration for the custodial budget reduction, which totals $750,000. What would you cut out of the current budget to account for adding 15 custodians back? Thank you.
Ms. Cobden.
That's actually a really challenging question about the budget, where would we get that money? I 100% want those custodians back. I've already heard horrible things about what's going on in the schools. I'd hate to touch athletics because I'm a three-lettered, athlete from Pilgrim. But we have made some severe, problems putting turf and things like that we didn't have when I was in school and we were fine. So as far as the budget goes, I think we need to really comb through it. I can't give a direct answer on what I would cut because I'm not on the school committee yet and I'm not privy to all the information, but I would certainly, if I get on, I would go through it and see what needs to be cut. There's things that can be cut. There's things that are being paid for. Buses. We need our buses to be looked at. Our buses cost over $80,000, and we're busing kids around, and some of the buses have 5 children in them. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money that we're spending on buses, and I think that needs to be looked at and possibly consolidated and see how we can do that. And that is where I'd probably start.
Thank you very much. Ms. Medeiros.
The custodians, that's a hot topic for me. Having an early childhood center, the first thing I think about is cleanliness and germs. So that was a really sad thing that failed. I think that athletics is a great way for some kids to get into college, great way for some kids to be involved in school sports, but I honestly, because middle school sports had just started, I looked at the idea if we could possibly put that on hold for a year or two until we could get this budget situated. I'm still hopeful that the city council will work with us on it. We do already have a transportation study that will be starting, so we can look at the best way, see how well we're doing with transportation. Can we make improvements? Can we not? And so I'm hopeful that our custodians will be back sooner than later, because there are 9 that we had to lay off and there's 15 positions, so it's not a great thing.
Thank you. Mr. Cornell.
Yeah, custodians, this is an interesting question because actually for the last few months I've been hearing a lot from parents and PTO members who are very concerned. For one, because of the safety of students. Now sometimes in 4 days of the school day, for 4 days, sometimes you don't have custodians at all. So now you have trash all around. Now hearing the teachers taking out their own trash now, and you just can't have that. That's a huge safety concern. Kids could get sick from that. So the custodians definitely need to be re-implemented. I examined the budget and I looked through the auditor's report. But also one thing I found recently and looked into is that the state funding formula for the state. And I think there's some things that definitely need to be looked at because there's a huge difference between how much we got than Cranston, for example. And although I know that they look over how much students pay for the with lunch money. However, when we got our audit report, they made sure that they called us an urban school. But however, if Cranston's getting much more money because of what's happening with the students buying lunch, then I think this audit report shouldn't be considered an urban school, and I think we should get another audit report.
Thank you. Mr. Adams.
I disagreed greatly with the custodian decision. And as Terry mentioned before with sports, I wouldn't want to cut sports because of the chances to get into college, but also what's never looked at is it's an outlet. It's not everyone that's in sports has the best situation. It's something for them to focus on and for them to strive to be better for. I think the big problem with what happened with the custodians is that it happened all at once in such a decimating amount to just the custodians. I think if we were able to look at the budget, rather than just choose one department and focus there, we shop around. Like as much as we don't want to hear it, we take a little bit of something from everything rather than a lot of everything from something.
Thank you. Mr. Casella?
I agree with much of what's been said. I especially agree with Nathan and his in his suggestion that the funding formula is skewed against Warwick. And but I think our performance audit has said that in the event that we do get the monies that we need to get things funded and comply with the law, included the reinstatement of the custodians, and that's primarily because the health department wouldn't be very happy with it not being the case. And it's very important for the schools to have the custodians back. And I think from a what do you cut standpoint, I think most of the cutting that can be done, and it's been established that it's been done as best it could be. The custodians, unfortunately, are a luxury or a non-essential as far as the law requires us to provide funding for certain programs, and the custodians fall outside of that, as well as the mentors. So they end up being unfortunately, the odd men out. I think that the thing that the school committee can do is to be much more diligent and much more unified with the bargaining groups and with the parents and the school committee itself, be much more vigorous in how we try to impress on the council, the Warwick City Council, to give us the money that we ask for, because in most cases, the money we ask for is the minimum amount that we need to run the system within the law. And so I think much of this goes back to funding. And if we were unified as a group, as opposed to being splintered, and stood together, as opposed to being apart, we have much more success getting the kind of monies we need, and we wouldn't have to cut custodians in order to comply with state law.
Time is up. Thank you. Before we move on to the next student, I want a follow-up question on that, just because I think Mr. Casella just touched a nerve here in terms of funding. That is the issue that's kind of swirling right now in terms of what can we get from the city level funding over the course of the past 10 years. Funding levels are pretty much where they were at in 2010 in terms of city contribution. My question, and we can keep the order moving forward, this will be for Ms. Medeiros first. How would you change, or how would you personally interact and work to maybe try and help the city council see the situation that we're in right now, and is there a way to improve the relationship, which seems to be at the very least strained?
Well, I see it a little differently. I see small bridges being built now. When I first got on, prior to the superintendent that we have now, the communication between the city and the school committee was almost non-existent. Through the superintendent, the acting superintendent, and when Dr. Holland was here, he really did notice a lot of that. I think that some of the city council people have been very open, asking a lot of questions, emailing, just like it is time-consuming and difficult and complex for a school committee member to understand our budget and the line items and where they come from and the transfers. It is equally difficult for the city to understand their budget. So for them to get our whole picture and for us to get their whole picture would take some time to work together. One thing that came out of the performance audit was something I learned was almost every other community that the performance audit, Mr. Hicks, has worked on, the city gets together with the schools and says, look, how much money are you going to need this year? And here's what we're working on. And that's something that we have not done in Warwick, and I think that would be a really great thing to start doing. I see that there are bridges being built. There's regular communication between the two right now. Is there still some strain between some there is, but I just want to keep moving forward with the school district.
Thank you. Mr. Cornell?
Well, regarding the funding for the schools, right now a lot of people are saying go to city council for the money, but what's interesting is that actually the school committee has gotten more money in the last few years. For example, in 2017, the school from the city they got $119 million, $482,464, and that's 2017. In 2018, they got $122 million, $482,464, and and then for this year we got $123,982,464. So there has been an increase from the school department. I agree we could have gotten more because some of the money was allocated to roads. But the fact is now that money is already being utilized on roads. So we're saying let's go to city council to get money, but the money I don't think is there. So I think instead we should be trying to reach out to the state, like go to the state house, talk with our state representatives, senators, because they have the money, and we definitely need to go over this funding formula. I think that's our best bet to balancing this budget.
Mr. Adams?
So, as Rick mentioned earlier, that I've been communicating a lot with a lot of officials like city council and state representatives and state senators. Now, I haven't been getting information from them to feed into my campaign. The only reason why I've talked with these people is because I want to know what they need, like what they need from the school committee going forward, what kind of communication they need. This is why I want to establish that open communication and establish that good rapport with these people, so that way when it comes down to it, we can start fixing these schools. Now, I don't think it just comes down to the amount of funding. I think it does come down to the accountability. We spend things wisely. But also, one thing that has been brought up too is grants. Like, if you apply for grants, there are grants out there. Like, we can start funding things like safety or the mentor program or whatever it may be, if we just go out there and look for those grants, because they're out there and they can help our kids before we need to even go talk to the city council or the state reps, and without even changing the funding formula. Don't get me wrong, I want to change the funding formula, but grants are a huge source of income that we could use.
But aren't grants not more of a temporary solution rather than a permanent one? For instance, the SIMS program that enables middle school children to get acclimated to the school before going into middle school, right now is currently being operated solely through grants.
Right.
However, that's currently not a long-term solution. There's no guarantee they get those grants, and there's no guarantee the program continues despite widespread acclaim of the program.
Right. Well, let's use an example. If we say safety, you don't need a grant every year to fix the schools to make sure they're safe. Like, even if it's a short-term solution, it's a short-term solution to fix a long-term goal.
Thank you. Mr. Casella?
I think with grants, and I've always been kind of a proponent of why the school department doesn't have grant writers, but unfortunately, then the school department and the schools are not allowed to give granting as grant commissions on grants, run them where a percentage of the grant goes to the person who writes it. Because if that was the case, you'd have thousands of people coming in wanting to write grants for us. Unfortunately, you have to pay someone to do it. It'd be another expenditure that might be better spent on custodians or something else. So that will become something that people will be concerned about, is that we're paying someone to find us grants. Now, obviously, if a grant, if we spend $35,000 on someone to write us 3 grants, then if we get the grant, that's a good thing. But there's no guarantees there. My point about the city council is not so much that we're kind of against each other, but rather that we're a one-number system. So we go to them with one number and they say yes or no. And if they don't give us the number that we asked for, they give us the level number that they had proposed to us years ago. And unfortunately, it's a perfect storm with debt for the bond, for the $25 million bond, with the extension of some of our top step teachers because of the changes in the pension reform, because of a number of different, it's like a perfect storm. The school department's been kind of really beat up as far as the numbers go, but we just haven't gotten the city to see their way clear to realize that they could give us what we need. And the biggest problem is they've always had 8 votes on the council. So when the mayor says, I'm level funding the schools, someone in the city has to step up and say, you just can't do that, Mr. Mayor. And we have the votes to make sure you don't, but no one has.
Thank you.
So I say we need to step up as a group or as and get after the city council and make them understand that it's very important.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Ms. Compton.
Okay, first of all, I think everyone seems to skip the fact that we've had the same mayor for 20 years. And this mayor felt like our children was a drain on our community. Literally has said that. So I think we all need to step back and realize and make our voting good and to get the mayor that will help us and change the way things can be. And a lot of people forget that we just have a new one. I like Kyle, I've been around for 3 years around our city council. I've been to the meetings when schools were involved and non-meetings. The majority of, I think the problem is that the fact that there's no trust of the school committee. They feel as though a lot of the money was wasted and they don't want to give any more out right now to this current school committee. And that's my opinion of what I've heard. As far as the grant writing, I know we had a grant writer a while back. We don't have one, but I know for a fact, because I'm very big on this, is that Dr. Cecil is going to be doing a lot of the grant writing, and she's wonderful. But what she explained to me was how they work, and she said that Cheryl Rabbit has absolute skills, because you have to write them exactly the way they're supposed to, so we need someone that knows the process. Bill McCaffrey, actually, the head of our Career and Tech Center, is a complete example of how to write grants. He has done such amazing things for our Career and Tech Center. And we need to lobby. We need to have our administration and our school committee members at the State House, and I don't see that. And I think that's extremely important. I mean, as we talked about it, the numbers are skewed because of the amount of kids who are on government lunch program.
Thank you.
Okay.
Everyone got their turn for that question? I believe so. We can move on to our 4th student. Andrew Powers is a senior at Tollgate, and he'll be asking the next question, starting with Mr. Cornell. Go ahead, Andrew.
The topic of technology in the schools has been at the center of disputes in the past. The school administration has made it clear that they are seeking to move away from older, scattered technology towards a more uniform, manageable system of devices that can be more easily maintained. Do you agree with how the district has gone about adapting to the new technology?
I think it's very important that our districts gain new technology because we're in the 21st century now. Like, we're in a different world. We need to adapt to this. However, we need to do it the right way. And we need to transition. For example, I remember over a year ago, the technology department actually threw away a bunch of computers in the classroom, and that was a whole waste of resources, in my opinion. And you just can't do that. So you need new technology, but also you can't get rid of all the other technology because we need to be also fiscally accountable because we spent a lot of money in Chromebooks, and I was at the meetings. They spent so many money on Chromebooks, and I'm for Chromebooks. However, the problem is now we're in a huge budget deficit. So we need new technologies, but we need to be fiscally smart about it.
Thank you. Mr. Adams?
This just comes back around to what I was saying about priorities. Like, if it's a necessity, absolutely. And I do believe that kids need to be fluent with technology. Like, believe me, I'm the biggest advocate for technology. Going through working in technology on many different occasions, it just comes down to you need to make sure that you're shopping the right areas. If you're going to be doing technology, it needs to be done right. So if you don't go for the most expensive thing, yeah, I understand the most expensive thing is the most flashy and it looks the best, but you need to go for what works the best. And that's what it comes down to. Like, when I went to Bryant, I got a laptop. It was a giant brick, but that thing has lasted until last month when it won't close anymore. So you make sure your money's put right, and if we're going to do technology upgrades, we need to make sure it's the right stuff. And like, I see Chromebooks, if they're being thrown out, no, a lot of those can be repurposed. Like, we did the same thing at the AV department at Bryant.
Thank you. Mr. Casella?
Well, obviously, in this day and age, technology is very important. The installation of all the Promethean boards and like everyone else has said, the Chromebooks has certainly brought us forward as that goes. The investment in technology is important, and I believe budget-wise, there's been money that's been put aside to take care of making these purchases and improvements. But again, I think you have to be very careful how you spend the money, and I don't quite understand the whole throw them away thing, but I know that they get reissued over a 3-year period and kind of recycled through the system. So I hate to believe that they're thrown away, but I'm sure that if they are, that's something I'd want to get on. But as far as bringing technology forward, I think an investment in technology is an investment in schools. And I think people have to realize, and this is another point you can bring to the members of the city council when you see them, is tell them that the schools are a revenue generator, and they help property values and all the other facets of our community that are important. And so we need to start thinking and looking at the schools as if they're an investment rather than a depression or a drain on our system. Because if we continue to give the money and kind of give it to you, but then want to pull it back because we're afraid you're going to misspend it. And that's where transparency, clarity, and trust comes out. Where if we start to trust each other and believe that we all have the same goal, and that is to bring the best to Warwick, then we wouldn't have this problem, and there'd be a lot more people thinking of the schools as the money that goes into schools as an investment, as rather than a drain.
Thank you, Mr. Casella. Ms. Cobden?
I agree. We have to be in the 21st century. However, like Mr. Adams said, we have to go for what's affordable. But our teachers need to have proper training also, and a lot of that's been eliminated because of budget reasons, which is unfortunate. And I'm actually going to quote one of our city council members when I heard Jeremy Ricks call it, our teachers have a toolbox. And just because something's a little outdated doesn't mean it's not useful anymore, and you don't throw them out, because it might have use. There's no communication between the teachers. Things are getting pulled out of their classrooms without even talking to them, and a lot of it's private stuff, their own monitors, their own printers. They're just taking stuff and without asking and throwing them out. And in fact, the city council requested all the members to show up for a meeting for that, and none of the school committee was there besides Ms. Bacchus, and they sent Ms. Rabbit and Mr. Alexander, who was the head of IT, to take the heat for this, what was going on. But the biggest thing with technology is we need to talk to our teachers and find out. They talk to other teachers in other districts that might have things that we're looking at buying. It's important to find out if this is really necessary. Do they really want it? Do they think it's going to be helpful in the school? They're the ones teaching our children. We don't need to buy things that they don't want, and we can't take away tools that they are using. It's not up to the school committee or the administration to decide what a teacher's going to use to teach our kids if it's older. We throw out things because of a light bulb. They had to know how expensive the light bulb was when they bought it. You don't throw it out.
Thank you. Ms. Medeiros?
The question was about technology and how are we going about doing it the right way,
Yes.
basically. Okay. So the Chromebooks were a slow process over a period of a few years, and I am a person who uses technology for a long period of time. I think the professional development really needs to be there, and because of funding, we have put some of that on hold, which is really unfortunate. But the technology that we needed in this district was really, really necessary, and so I'm glad that we're moving forward on it. I would like to see a little bit more of a study into the licensing and the renewal fees, because that is really, really costly. It's one after another, after another, after another, after another every year, and I don't have a full understanding of technology and law and renewal, but I don't know if there is a group maybe that we can get some work out of, like we do with our health insurance. We're part of a consortium for that. We get some of our school supplies by being part of a group. And so I'm hoping that coming down the road, now that so many school departments are in technology and the equipment starts getting older, that we can maybe look and see if there's something along that line. I know that we can repair and repair and repair, but it is frustrating for a teacher when something shuts down, they can't get it going, it freezes up, 3 students can't do their lesson. And that can frustrate a teacher where they just don't even want to use the technology in the classroom. So there is a balance between newer technology and being able to refurbish.
Thank you very much. We'll keep moving along with students. We're actually coming up on the half hour left about, so we're moving right along. I want to make sure that all students get a chance to ask their questions. So up next will be Ryan Corrigan, a senior from Pilgrim. And this will start with Mr. Adams. So go ahead whenever you're ready.
Do you believe that public schools should be focused on growth or proficiency when it comes to educating their students?
Mr. Adams.
This comes down to something that was pushed heavily in when I attended Bryant was anything we learned was either a balance of effectiveness or was a balance of efficiency. And what you want to do is you don't want to focus on just one. You need to have it so you're in the middle. Like, not that you're focusing entirely on efficiency or that you're focusing entirely on effectiveness. You need to make sure that it's just efficient enough that it's effective. Obviously, you want to maximize it in every possible way, but as soon as you push it too far, you're essentially going to start paying for those extras that you want to put towards those priorities.
Could you just repeat the question, please? I'm sorry, Ryan, thank you.
Do you think that educators and the school committee should be focused on growth or proficiency when it comes to educating students?
Well, I think as far as proficiency, we really need to work on achievement in Warwick. We have my goal would be to be in the top 10 in the city, in the state, and number 1 would be even better. But at this point, where our achievement levels are low, and in order to really shine as a system and start to attract what people believe are families that are leaving us because of our system to go to other public school systems. North Kingston, East Greenwich are examples. They're public school systems, but sometimes people will move to those communities because they want more space or they want to be in a different community. And it's not always about the schools, but a lot of people that will leave Warwick will go to those communities and be much happier in the situation because their school systems are funded better and their achievements their scores are higher, or their achievement in certain curricula are better. So I think that it's important for the school department and the teachers and everyone else to work real hard on trying to build our achievement. That's the main goal, I think, going forward as it pertains to how we teach and how we learn. I'm not a teacher, I don't know. I've never been in the trenches, and I know they work very hard, but we have a very well-developed faculty and very dedicated and a dedicated staff, and I think that they have all the tools necessary in themselves, within themselves as teachers, to help us bring achievement up. And I think that we all have the same goal, and that is to have the best possible achievement. And that should be the next phase of our growth as a system, is to start to bring, because it just doesn't match up right now with all the effort we put into it.
Thank you. Ms. Cobden?
Yes. With the growth and proficiency, I've seen the test scores where we sit as far as us versus, I go to the achievement committees all the time, and I've only missed one. And I got to see a lot of slideshows of where we're at. And it's disappointing because we used to be in the top 3 when I was here. It was a big thing to be at a Warwick school, like it is right now to be in Barrington, you know. I think that we need to work on both ends, kind of like what Kyle said, and look at it in the middle of it. I see us taking away a lot of resources from our kids. And I think bringing some of those resources back, like reading recovery, and start at a young age, we're going to get better results. Instead, we're taking away science so they can do it more, but we can't afford even right now to buy the software for each classroom right now. And that's not helping our kids. So if you want to look at growth and proficiency, we have to look at what we're giving our kids, somewhat what Mr. Casella said. It's just it needs to, the growth and proficiency needs to be with our teachers, talking to them. We're not communicating. And I think a lot of our growth and proficiency is a problem right now because of lack of communications and resources that are being taken from our children. And I think it can be worked on. And I really believe that Warwick can get up to be the best again.
Thank you. Ms. Medeiros?
Growth versus achievement. Well, we definitely want our kids to achieve, and things change. It seems like every 10 years there's another development, another way to teach, another way. Sometimes it's interesting, sometimes it's a little frustrating, sometimes it's just new words that say the same thing. But as we move forward in the district, some of the ways that we want to look at achievement, for instance, we had a pilot program for report card trimesters. And the result of that was a lot of good feedback from the community, from teachers, from students, from parents. And so the report card committee has been working pretty diligently, and they are moving along on it. They've got some ELA progress done. And so I think that the district is looking at how do we best achieve, and test scores are really important. So if we can bring the resources to the students, for instance, more career in tech, that's my thing, to make that be an all-day school. But we do want to see achievement, we want to see growth, and then we have to look at the individual child and how they best are getting their knowledge. Proficient for one is a different picture when it's proficient for another. There's different pictures of proficiency, and while data is good, it's not always the only thing we should look at.
Thank you. Mr. Cornell?
With proficiency, this actually makes me think of when I was in high school when we took the park test, for example. I remember I was actually took the test run of the park test, and I know that many of my fellow students actually didn't really try the park test because it didn't really count. However, so with proficiency, I feel sometimes that you don't have the greatest reflection of how a school district is doing, because if the students do not take a test seriously and do not do well, that brings everyone down. So, so I think we should also very much focus on academically, because that's what's most important, that the children graduate and succeed. So that's what I have to say about proficiency.
Thank you very much. And we can move on to our final student volunteer, Rebecca Carcieri, senior from Tollgate, will provide her question, and this will start with Mr. Cassell.
In your opinion, what are the 3 greatest areas of need facing Warwick schools heading into the future?
Well, there are a lot of different things that Warwick needs to do better, and I've kind of cited myself on a few initiatives that I'd like to bring forward. As far as how great they are they the greatest? I would have to say, unfortunately, everything goes back to money, and I think working as a team, working with the collective bargaining groups, and working with the administration and with the school committee, we all should work together to try to impress on the city side. And we shouldn't be, first of all, we shouldn't be two sides, we should be together, because we all want the same thing. It's just how do we get there? I think it's important that we try to impress on the city that this is an investment in the future of Warwick, and we need to get together on that. So we're to work out our funding. That's very important. I personally think that the national anthem is an important thing to me, of all things. And so I've seen in a couple of different events that they didn't do it, and I jumped up and sang it. And now I kind of have this idea that it might be something that a senior project might be able to grasp onto and come up with some kind of protocol or some kind of policy that would allow for the national anthem to be set into some of our sporting events and things, because I hate to see that. We're the Patriots, we should have that. And then thirdly, the third thing that I think is most important to me is obviously the improvement of the facilities, and we've made some major strides that way. I know we've talked about the intercoms, and I know that stuff is getting underway now, so finally it's working. And so I think also looking forward in how do we kind of improve or make new our system in the years to come, because we can't continue to occupy these older buildings. It's going to come time for us to start thinking forward, and so I think how we get to the next level of improvements of our facilities is important.
Thank you. Ms. Cobb.
As far as the three greatest area needs, I think we need to work as a team. I think as far as the school committee and the administration, along with the teachers, there need to be respect among all of you. And I don't see that, and I haven't seen that in the 3 years I've been very involved. There isn't a lot of respect, and we need the respect. We also need to make sure and be more respectful of our children. It's almost like dressing for success. You know, you work in a business, you put a suit on and you go to work, you're dressing for success. If we aren't respecting our buildings and fixing them to the level that they need to be, our kids aren't going to respect it. They're not going to take their education seriously. If they don't see the adults in charge, if they see them fighting, if they see them arguing, they're aware of what's going on in the city and what's going on with money. And their buildings are, you know, their rooms have rat holes from, you know, having mice chew on it. That doesn't help our children, so we really need to work on it. And as Rick said, it does come down to money. But we need to take care of it and have our children be dressed for success. And that means that we have to be more responsible of what our buildings are like inside and how we respect the teachers. Teachers will not be respected if they see them being disrespected.
Quick follow-up from Ms. Cobden. I came into the district about 1.5 years ago. I'd been covering papers in Massachusetts for about 3 years prior to that. Never before had I didn't know what I was walking into when I walked into my first school committee meeting in Warwick. Believe me, especially in the midst of a contract dispute that had been ongoing for much longer than I had been here. You mentioned respect, and that's the reason I bring this question up. Do you believe the tone of some of the school committee meetings, particularly from the membership of the union and the audience and other people who were perhaps shouting things at the people on stage, do you find that to be respectful, or do you think that the respect needs to go both ways? Is there ways that everyone can improve in being respectful?
I believe as far as the school committee goes, Ethan, people are sick of it. And that's what I'm hearing while I'm campaigning and going to door. They don't go to these meetings, and they stop going to these meetings, a lot of them, because they don't feel like they're being heard. We have public comment at the end, and then everything's already been voted on. And if you go to a city council meeting, before each item, they're allowed to speak. And I think if we have to have 3 school committee meetings a month, then we do it. But we need to listen to the people and the teachers. Everybody needs to be respectful. But when we're not being respected in the audience and being involved in what's going on, you know, we have big problems. And that's why you have school committee meetings where we have police officers at them.
Thank you. Please refrain from applause. This is a neutral format. I appreciate your enthusiasm, though. Ms. Medeiros.
The 3 greatest areas of need, the state aid funding formula, we really need to get that reconfigured so that we can get some money, because we're asking the city for money, but the city needs money from the state. And since I think our second need is to be one team, then I can't be bashing the city council. I can be frustrated because we need it. I can be concerned because we're not getting it, but I can't bash them personally, because the state aid, the funding formula, all of that really needs to be reconfigured so that we're not sharing 25% of the money where the 75% is going only for communities. So I think that's a really big need. So the team between the city second. And the third need that we have is, as we move forward in a really technological kind of a world, it's all media. We need an all-day career in tech. We've got, in talking to a colleague of mine, we've got North Kingstown starting a wind farm education. And if we want to keep the students in our district, we've got to make it be enticing, exciting, and give them the opportunity to have exploratory classes in 9th grade. The all-day career in tech would give them the math there, and the face of a career in tech school has changed over the course of the years, and many kids that know they're going into some form of engineering could be getting more professional job training, interning, paid jobs, getting out and getting college paid for, and that's being seen in other districts. We've got 10 great all-day full career in tech, and Mr. McCaffrey does such a great job over there.
Time is up. Thank you.
Oh, good way to end it.
Mr. Cornell.
I think the biggest thing we need to do is just for the school committee to listen to their constituents, listen to the teachers, listen to the students. I've been at these meetings for years, and that just hasn't happened. We don't lack ideas, right? There's full of good ideas in the school district from a bunch of parties. However, the thing is, because the school committee doesn't listen to them, they don't implement those good ideas, and then they have their own ideas, they don't modify them, and a lot of them turn out to be bad. So that's why we're in the situation we're in. But however, if they just listened, then so many good things could have come out. And even if you disagree with what the school committee does, at least you can say, at least my school committee member listened to me. At least I was able to meet with them and talk to them. And I think that's very important for a school district, and that's what we need to aim for. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Adams?
So I kind of preemptively answered your question in my opening statement. So like I said,
reiterate.
yeah. So well, I want to reiterate one specific point. But like Mr. Casella said, Ms. Cobden and Mr. Cornell said, with the facilities and listening, and a big point that Ms. Cobden brought up was public comment. That's one of the things I drastically want to change, like how the public's opinion isn't heard until the end. It should be heard first. But the big thing I want to reiterate, especially with open communication, is like the biggest stakeholder are you guys. You guys are the ones who you're the result of what we're doing. So I think the open communication doesn't just have to be with the city council and the parents and the teachers. Like I mean, me and Mr. Cornell, we're recently in your shoes. Granted, him more recently than I, but we can really relate to you guys. It's like I understand, like especially when you're a kid and you're told, this is what's good for you, this is what you need. You guys are you're just about adults. A lot of you are seniors. Like, you know what you need too. Like, whether it's go to college or start your career. Like, we need to listen to you guys and see what you need. Because that's a big thing that's been really overlooked.
All right, thank you all. We have, we're coming up on our last question actually. So if we, bear with me 1 second while I gather my thoughts. Okay. I think in terms of, and this is gonna have to be a shortened answer period because we have to get ready for closing statements. In witnessing what is going on with the district through the past, call it a year and a half for me at least, we've seen obviously a differing of opinions on many things, and we've seen things become obviously wedge issues that people seem to be very polarized and disagreeing on. My question, and we kind of covered this a little bit throughout the forum, how do you bring people together through the course of working with the administration specifically? We hear a lot about working with teachers, working with students, but there's a team of administrators that work very hard as well. And I think hasn't been noted enough that these people also put in a lot of effort and a lot of work to help make this district run. Unfortunately, students and teachers can't run the district by themselves. How would you work and collaborate with the existing administration to bring the district forward in a positive way, is my question. And I believe it starts with Ms. Cobden.
Okay. In our district, what I've seen over the past 3 years and how I've been working and doing pro bono educational advocacy work is that we don't treat our kids and the parents as customers. They are customers. So that needs to change. And our administration does work hard, and we do need them, but we need respect to the community. And that's how you're going to bring people together. People come to me so aggravated, they don't know what to do. And the things I hear and the emails that I see that are given back to them is disrespectful. And in some of the meetings I've been in, it's been completely disrespectful. And they're customers. These are their children. The kids need what they need. It's not fair to them to harass a parent that is at wit's end and maybe has a special needs child that it's already difficult for them. They need to be treated with respect. And I think the way that we bring this community together in all facets of our school department is showing respect and giving respect. And that requires a lot of work. It needs to change. Our administrators need to teach. People shouldn't be walking around frightened for their jobs. That's not a healthy environment. We need to change that. Bullying needs to stop, and it stops at the top.
Thank you. Please, thank you again. Ms. Medeiros.
When a parent needs help with their children and they're coming at it maybe from a single parent household, maybe working 2 jobs, maybe not sleeping last night because they had a baby, and yet they have a child that has needs, maybe had a behavior problem, maybe had an academic issue. Sometimes the information isn't shared in a mutually acceptable way, and that causes feelings. And I think it's important that they be able to say, look, there was a misunderstanding here. You're just gonna have to bury it, come to the table, and that's what you're just gonna have to keep doing, and somebody eventually will make amends. And I've seen it happen many, many times in the district, especially with children of special needs. It can be very frustrating for parents, especially if they have more than one child with special needs. And we are now bringing the resources to the students more, and that also came along with change. And I just think the most important thing is to be a listener. If there is some anger coming towards you, don't give it back. And it just goes through all the departments. I just don't think that anger and name calling and judging helps anybody. And everyone who works in our school district is serving the families, and I think that if everyone just kind of remembers that, backs up, compromise happens, and I've seen it happen.
Thank you. Mr. Cornell.
So I think actually to bring people together, it's actually it's not very difficult. For one, if I am given the honor of being elected to school committee, one of the first things I want to do is to create a subcommittee of the school committee, which would consist of parents, teachers, and students, which would advise the school committee on all matters. So before they vote on something, they can get their perspectives. So then we can have much more educated decisions made. And also in regards to the city council, there's a committee that's established, which I currently co-chair, the Community Outreach Educational Committee. And I hope to use that committee so we can, and actually the city council members, there's 5 that serve on that committee. They can't serve all at the same time due to open meetings laws, but however, they're all willing to be part of that conversation and they're willing to talk. So, and actually at one of our meetings, like for example, that $6 million bond, which it took forever for it to be discussed, actually the superintendent came to one of our meetings and a city council member actually discussed it, and then a few weeks later, that bond happened. So I think that committee can accomplish a lot of things, and the subcommittee, the school committee, can really be helpful so we can get all their perspectives before the school committee votes.
Thank you. Mr. Adams?
So I want to hit on what you said, people working hard. I don't think there's anyone that doesn't work hard in this situation. I think it's more about working right. And that's where trust and transparency comes in, because we're not getting anywhere with no one trusting anyone and no one knowing what another party is doing. And I think Mr. Cornell just said one very key word in his last statement, which is the word conversation. Life is a conversation. You're not going to get anywhere without communicating with people. You're not going to just walk through this life silent and just happen to hit the right targets. You're going to have to talk to people to get where you want to go. So it has to be open communication, it has to be transparency, accountability, trust, and definitely conversations.
Just to follow up on that, is there an issue in particular you find that lacks transparency?
I think along the lines of one of the things, I'll bring up city council, is one of the pain points that I hear from city councils when I ask them how they feel about the school committee is that they kind of mislead them, or that their money isn't going where they're saying it was supposed to go. And that's not transparent, and it's definitely not accountable, because then are they going to trust them giving them more money going forward?
Can you provide a specific example?
That they haven't given me any examples. It's more along the lines of they just feel that they can't trust the school committee.
Okay. Mr. Casella.
As a member of the Charter Commission for Schools some 10 years ago, this kind of same patina was kind of permeating things. We were brought forward, myself and 4 others, to come up with some ideas on how to change things. A couple of the things that came up were the confusion that the budget provided with the city council receives the budget, and it was on mimeograph paper. So we made recommendations that it's more clear, and so that it's easier to read, so people could understand better. Another thing that came up that is pertinent to what we're doing today is similar to what Mr. Cornell said, and that is having subcommittees. The city council has subcommittees before their meetings, and that is where you can ask specific questions pertaining to specific legislation. When you go up to the city council, they have public comment, but that downstairs is where you get the nuts and bolts of why things are happening. So I think expanding the school committee to 7 with 2 appointed members gives us more people and maybe a little bit more of an opportunity to have subcommittees so that there can be more open discussion between the constituents and the committee itself. And also making 2 meetings a month. So now we can designate both meetings, 1 meeting with public comment so that there's no exchange, and 1 meeting where we have a subcommittee meeting open for everyone, and then may move on to maybe some other items that we've moved. So the meetings don't go so long, but there's also a chance for folks to get up and ask specific questions. And I think, Nathan, that's where you're going to get that exchange that will help bring ideas forward and make everyone feel more engaged in the process and make everyone feel like their opinion matters.
Thank you very much. And now, believe it or not, we're moving on to closing statements. Everyone got a chance to answer that question? Right. So the order of opening statements will be reversed. So whoever had card number 5 will be the first to give their closing statements. We have about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes for closing statements, so feel free to expand. And Ms. Medeiros,
I'm 5.
Go ahead.
Well, I think that it went really well tonight with the students and the studio. I'm glad that that worked out for you guys, and I'm really appreciative that you were able to put it all together. I like being part of the school committee. I think it's challenging. I want to continue being part of the school committee. When I first got on, it's completely different than how it is now. And without disparaging any past people, I see that we have been level funded for the last 10 years. And what we have accomplished in the last couple of years is far more than we accomplished in the whole 4 years of my first tenure. And that's something that I'm really proud of. And although it was challenging and people had fear and people had concern, when I walked through the open houses and I saw a combination of support staff, fantastic TAs, fantastic clerks, teachers, administration, the 8th grade tour guides at Vets really hit the nail on the head. They've never seen a better school than what they had right there. And one girl even said she was so afraid to go there. It looks so big from the street, and yet she feels so comfortable there. And it was only October. So that made me feel really good that we really worked hard on that, remembering that as your kids get older, you didn't pay attention what was going on when they're 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now they're 7 and 8. We're talking about closing schools. Why are we doing it so fast? Well, when I got on almost 8 years ago, they had already started closing schools and were continuing on with the consolidation. So this is something that's been going on for many years. Could we change the way we did some of the things? We did, and that was why when it was time to close Gorton, I voted no against it. I just, in my own objective opinion, with everyone that I listened to, I thought we needed another year to get our ducks in a row. I think,
That's
is that enough?
unfortunately,
Oh,
that's
good.
all we can allow.
No,
Thank
no,
you.
no, that's good.
Mr. Cornell. Oh, sorry. Who was number 4? Were you number 4?
I am number
okay.
4.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, I care a lot about our community. I grew up in Warwick. I'm glad to have gone to Warwick Public Schools. If elected, I believe I can bring that unique perspective of being a recent student to the school committee, so I can give them eyes into what it is like to be in the schools. Also, if elected, I promise to be accountable to my constituents. I'll answer my constituents' emails. I'll answer their phone calls. I'll give them my cell phone number. I'll also meet with them because I think that's very important of an elected official to do. And also, I believe I'm qualified because I've attended all these meetings for all these years. I've attended school committee meetings, city council meetings, special school committee meetings, and I attended community events. If my constituents elect me, then I'll put everything in it. I'll treat it as a full-time job because I care a lot of our schools, and I'll do the best I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 3.
Judy, that's you.
Please.
So, so before I get into that, I want to thank you, Ethan, and the Warwick Beacon for putting this together. Studio 107 for allowing us the space, and obviously you all for asking questions for us, because it takes a lot to get involved. And speaking of involved, I'll just say about how I got into this is the first question I was asked by someone was, did I get into this for politics, or did I was interested in the school and that got me into politics? And I'm just gonna let you know now, I don't have a care for politics. I care about this city and where this city is going. And that's all it comes down to. And if you all are like me and you believe it's time for a change, like I said before, I believe I am that change. And before I get off, I just want to wish luck to all my fellow candidates on November 6th. And that's about it.
Thank you. Number 2.
That's me.
Go ahead.
First off, I want to thank the Warwick Beacon for organizing the forum, and especially to the student participants. It was a job well done. Over the years, I've always wanted to say the words, public service is a family tradition. My dad was a Warwick police officer for 9 years. He was a founding member of the Warwick PAL, athletics, back in the day when Joe Johnson was around. And then he also was a member of the WISE Union for 13 years, and what was well known amongst the WISE people as the Phantom Owl. He used to write for their newsletter, and he sat on the executive board, I believe. And so there's a connection with me and my dad and my family with public service. And so with that said, I've run for office before, and I've come up short both times. And it was not for a lack of effort or not for my misunderstanding of the issues or anything like that. It was because I was selfish and prideful. I thought I could do it myself, and I was reluctant to ask for help. Well, this time it's different. I have a core group of people that are helping me that I like to call Team Casella. They've been wonderful, and I want to take this time to thank all of them. I also want to apologize to any residents of District 1 if I don't get to you. As you may have noticed, my mandible is a lot bigger than my thigh and calf muscles. So I don't get around so well as far as ambulatorily. And so I may not make it to every household, so if I don't shake your hand, I will definitely try to leave you some literature so you can learn more about me. If you want to find out more about what I stand for and some of the things that interest me going forward, you can check out my website, Rick Casella, or at Warwick School Committee on Facebook. Not able to get sorry about that. I also, I'm not done yet, right? I also
5 seconds, 10 seconds.
I'll be posting some polling locations and doing some other things as a public service. Lastly, I want to thank my beautiful wife, Donna, a Pilgrim High School graduate and proud mother. I'm not an easy guy to live with when I'm campaigning, and thanks for listening to me hone my message over and over again, and thanks for being the best wife and mother any man could ask for. I love you for that and so much more. And thank you to everyone here, and good luck to all my colleagues here on the panel. And have a nice evening. Thank you.
Very wise move to finish with the wife, so I respect that.
I was expecting a ring.
And that leaves Ms. Cobb.
Okay. First of all, a product of Warwick Schools. I graduated from Pilgrim in '86. I want to thank all the kids here. I know what it's like to be a kid in Warwick Schools. And I look forward to your 30th when we have another debate. And I think it's great that we're getting kids involved in civics. And I want to also thank, everyone involved in the filming of this. I think this is wonderful. This is the stuff we need to look at. We don't hear about this because all we do is hear fighting about money and things. There are wonderful things in our schools. I'm from a teaching family. My mother retired from teaching in Warwick, my dad in South Providence. Education is a big, important thing to me. First of all, I'll bring you teamwork, transparency, and a ton of dedication. I've been involved for 3 years, nonstop, all my free time is spent doing school stuff. Whatever school needs me, whether it's in my district or not. I'm actually work more out of my district at schools like Wyman serving spaghetti dinners. I do it because I want to do it. Wherever I'm needed, I will go. If you send me an email, I'll answer it. You're not going to get an email that says, thank you for this information. Please send this to the chair. I mean, that's ridiculous, and I've seen these. Your words will not fall on deaf ears with me. I have 30 years experience in the public and private sector, and I can bring a lot. I'm already on the subcommittee of the school committee for the policy committee for almost 2 years, I'm on my second year. And I feel like I bring things to the table. That's my forte. I have a serious background in compliance and legal and finance. And I think I can bring you fiscal responsibility. That is huge when you're on the school committee. And I will bring that to you. I understand finances very well from working in some of the largest investment banks worldwide. I've worked overseas doing that.
That is all the time that we have.
Thank you.
So I have to thank all of you very much. Can we get a round of applause for everyone who helped with this? I couldn't agree more that there are great things happening in these schools. I am very fortunate to be able to write about them all the time. Please look for them in the Warwick Beacon. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I very much appreciate it.
Nice ad.
I want to say good luck to all my opponents.
Very good. Very good. Good luck to everybody, and good luck,
Good job,
everyone. Go
everybody.
Sox. Let's do it.